Hey guys, James here again on my spinny chair, here today to talk about Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. This is a classic, it's technically historical fiction as well. It was written in the 1960s. It takes place during World War II. It follows the story of a guy called Yossarian, John Yossarian, who is a he's a airplane bomber. He's a bomber, but he's a bomber pilot. But he doesn't. It's complicated. Bomber planes are complicated. He drops the bombs on people, but he doesn't fly the plane. So he's a bombardier. He's not a bomber pilot. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what his job is. Okay, that's not the point. The point is he's in the Air Force during World War II. He's stationed on this island in Italy called Pianosia with a load of other guys. And his whole thing is that he just wants to go home. He's tired of the war. He doesn't want to be blown up in an aeroplane, which is absolutely fair enough. Neither do I. The problem is, it turns out everything and everyone is conspiring to prevent Yossarian from actually going home. It's kind of a complicated novel to describe plot-wise, because it kind of jumps all over the place, and the plot is really not the point of the novel. This is a satire in its purest form. Everything about it is exaggerated to the point of near absurdism, in order to highlight and criticize different elements of American culture and war culture at the time. Not really a lot about the war in this. I think you can definitely adapt the critiques more or less to anything else, really. The war and the army, kind of, but it's more about bureaucracy and capitalism and the just utter neglect that these systems have for individuals. Basically the whole thing, the reason why Yossarian can't go home is because the leader, like the colonel of the squadron that he is a part of, keeps raising the number of missions that the men have to do before they're allowed to go home. And the reason he does that is because he wants to show off to his superiors that his men are doing more than everyone else. The problem is, obviously, this guy isn't, the colonel's not flying the missions, but he's getting all the credit, and he just wants the props without caring that his men are getting blown up. He doesn't see them as people. It's very interesting. It's really well done. It's really funny for the by and large majority of the book, but it also has some proper harrowing scenes. Like when it touches on the war stuff, like people dying, war crimes, that stuff gets kind of bleak, but it's never bleak for too long before you're laughing at something ridiculous again. And it's going to be one of those books, whether you find it funny or not is really going to depend on your sense of humor. If you have, I don't know, I feel like I don't want to say it's a British humour style, because I don't know, I find that kind of wanky, saying that British people are funnier, but it's very sardonic, it's very gallows humour. If you've worked in a big business, if you've worked in a big corporation, I think you would definitely relate to a lot of the things in here and find them quite funny just because you relate to them. I can definitely see why some people don't like the book, because it does, plot-wise, it jumps around all over the place. The timeline is very stream of consciousness. One of the techniques that Heller uses is he'll be talking about, it'll be each chapter is basically from one character's perspective. So the chapter will be about that character, and then at the end it will go off on a tangent about someone else. And then the next chapter will be about them, but it might not be chronologically the same. It might not even be in the same place. It's a bit confusing, but if you're paying attention to it and if you're following along, he does a really good job of setting up a joke at one point in the book and then paying it off down the road. Sometimes when you don't expect it to be paid off, which is why you kind of have to be paying attention the whole time. But it's really well done. It is really well done. There's a lot of characters, and I think a lot of people struggle with being introduced to them. I don't know. I don't know if that was part of the intention, because like when you're in a big business, so many people and faces blend together that it's hard to keep track of everyone. But again, if you're paying attention, by the end you'll put it in your mind who is who and who is doing what. The timeline is something difficult to piece together, but it doesn't really need to be pieced together. It's kind of more vignette based. There are like fixed points in the timeline that you know about, like, and if you're one of my tips, if you are interested in reading this and you want to try and piece the timeline together, just try and go by how many missions they're forced to fly, because they never get reduced. It's always more. So if he's saying I'm flying 70 missions now, that's, you know, much later on than when he's flying 40, you know. So I mean, I don't really have much more to say about it on the surface. I really did enjoy it, but I can't really say too much more without going really in depth on each individual plot thread and everything, and that is not for this video. So thank you guys for tuning in. That was my quick thoughts on Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. Join me in the next video and I'll see you then. Actually, I can't really say, I don't know why I always say that. I can't even see anyone through my camera lens apart from my own red face. Bye for now.